Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Friends of Liberty Republican Club. We have two amazing people. You can see them. They're both gorgeous in their way. They are. Look at that handsome man and that beautiful young woman right there. So we have youth, very youth, beautiful youth, and youth in his way. So, wisdom, absolutely.
Into the
She's
mic.
pretty wise herself.
Hilda, hold the mic closer.
I'm holding. Anyway, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have our patriot right here. And he's dressed in a flag, so if you had difficulty seeing the flag, you could always look at his.
Thank you, Hilda. And, not that she doesn't look marvelous every night, but look at Hilda. Isn't she looking beautiful tonight? Oh, my God.
Really?
Fabulous. Okay, flags over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation, if I can find him. There he is. David Dolney, who is an active member of the synagogue, and someone was interested in knowing more, he's the man. And he is the former vice chairman of the synagogue and a fabulous guy. I know because he's my friend.
Thank you. I'm going to say it in Hebrew first for those who understand it, and I'll translate it into English. Yivarechacha Hashem v'yishmerecha. Yo'er Hashem panav elecha v'yechuneka. Yisah Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May Hashem bless you and safeguard you. May Hashem illuminate his countenance for you and be gracious to you. May Hashem turn his countenance to you and establish peace for you. Thank you.
Amen, everybody. And please sit down.
You may be seated.
Okay. So I'm going to ask Anna, who will be introducing our first very special young woman. You could sit. And she is, I met her. I was lucky to meet her, and look, just because I asked if she would come, she did. And we're really blessed to have her here. And Anna's going to introduce her, and then she'll have some time to speak after, I'm going to say her name, Sara Steele, because she's going to repeat it. Sara, Al will make his presentation, and then we'll open up for discussion and questions if you have them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. He said so. That's nobody knows who he is in the school.
I do.
Everybody knows Fred. Fred Hadley, my only Democrat friend. Actually, that's not true. I'm friendly with everybody who wants to know. I'm not going to say what. I don't want to,
Thank you, Hilda.
Yes.
Sara Steele. Sara Steele is President Emerita of Harvard Salient, Harvard's only conservative publication. Originally from New York City, Sara spent nearly a decade as an artist with the Washington Ballet in D.C., performing at the Kennedy Center, and appearing at the New York Times, Dance Magazine, and Point Magazine. In 2023, she returned to Harvard College to pursue an AB in government and joined the ranks of Salient. Under her leadership, the Salient has secured university-wide distribution rights and established itself as Harvard's home base for all conservative students, faculty, and alumni. She has been featured on Fox and Friends and profiled by the Boston Globe for her impact on campus discourse. beyond her work on campus, she also works as an editorial producer at the Ben Shapiro Show with the Daily Wire and will continue to work for Music
Fix your
Shapiro
mic.
after
Fix
graduation.
your mic.
Can't hear you.
Fix the mic. Can't hear.
Now?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's welcome Sarah, and please take your mic.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you all for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you. Hilda, can you hear me? How about now?
Yes.
Okay, really close. We got it. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be here with Al. Moira, thank you again. I have never done anything like this before, actually. My introduction makes it sound like I'm a seasoned professional at these types of things, but I'm a senior at Harvard College, and even though I have some time of leave, which I'll talk about shortly away from school, I spent all of it dancing, and when you're doing ballet, you're certainly not talking. So this is a new type of thing for me, but anyway, I'm very grateful to have the opportunity. A little about me before I dive into my time at Harvard. As Hilda mentioned, I'm from New York. I grew up in a liberal, reformed, Jewish New York family. This might be a familiar story for many of you. And I immediately became enamored with everything ballet. At one point I wanted to change my name to Svetlana. And I didn't really, think much about my Jewish identity or certainly anything political until probably the end of high school. I enjoyed a nice moment on the Upper West Side in New York in my high school years. Nothing like it is now, unfortunately. And I went wherever I pleased, and I did what I wanted, never felt unsafe. I pursued my studies at Professional Children's School, which sounds very fancy, but it's basically an arts high school that enabled me to train as much as possible while I was pursuing a professional ballet career. But definitely living in the city, it gives you some street smarts, right? And especially being a Jewish young woman in New York City, it gives you some street smarts. And I decided to pursue ballet, but I also had a Harvard acceptance that I had to contend with, and I was torn. But initially, I told my folks, I would love to just be able to dance, and that's all I want to do. And they were very wise and said, "Believe us,
Can
Sarah."
I interrupt you for a second? If you hold the mic towards you, you'll be understood better.
How's this? Okay. I'll put my elbow here. And they told me not to squander the opportunity. I mean, I think it's an age-old piece of advice from a parent to a child that no one can take your education away from you. And this was, of course, in 2012, so perhaps a decade ago. Harvard is not what it is now, right? There's never a thought in my mind. In fact, my parents were kvetching as soon as they brought me to campus. They were so excited that their daughter was going to be able to attend Harvard. It's a dream, right? And then I ended up going for a semester in the fall of 2014. I took a gap year. And that semester, I have to say, I wasn't super politically activated, but I was aware. And we had orientation, and they gave us readings like John Stuart Mill, and they taught us about what it means to be a good citizen and what you can do to give back to your country and to the world. So kind of what you'd hope from, a freshman orientation at a place like Harvard. And I remember we were sitting in a circle, and somebody said, "Hello, I'm so-and-so, and my pronouns are, he, him."
What?
And everybody around said, "What?" This was in 2014. And everyone around said, "Oh, like, why are you saying that?" And someone very politely was like, "Oh, I'm saying that because these are my gender pronouns, and that is how I identify." And everyone just went, okay, Nobody took it particularly seriously, but it was considered a polite thing. And of course, everyone's very tolerant. You know, a bunch of high school seniors arriving on campus as college freshmen don't want to upset anyone, so no one's going to like take a stand about someone saying their pronouns in that kind of context. My class is not extremely non-problematic. When you freshmen fall, you know, all of the stuff that was going on about sexual harassment on campuses at the time, totally over my head, no issues. I left Harvard after that semester. I danced for 9 years in total, so I usually just say a decade to tie it up with a nice bow. And the Washington Ballet, I mean, it was a beautiful, beautiful artistic experience. I'm very, very privileged because I'm sure many of you have children or grandchildren who have taken ballet or enjoyed time, maybe some of you yourselves enjoyed time dancing, and to do it professionally is a gift. I can't say that enough. But it certainly opened my eyes in terms of the political landscape, being in the nation's capital for all of that time. You know, you brush shoulders with, you know, senators and folks in the administration at fundraisers, and usually they're Democrats. And I just thought, like, this is so interesting, this whole side of the city that I'm totally not in contact with. Meanwhile, at work, we were getting DEI trainings. And I think for me, the turning point was the pandemic. Totally kind of shifted my entire worldview. As a ballet dancer, I was unemployed, obviously. The Kennedy Center was not having any performances. Meanwhile, you know, the Super Bowl was happening down here in Florida, I think, while the Kennedy Center was closed and we were laid off. So obviously that's a pretty astounding experience. I was also being told, because I appeared to be white, meanwhile I'm, you know, half Latina and half Jewish, I'm like really a minority, I feel super intersectional. They said, you know, because you appear white, we have to cast you in a different show on occasion because there's just too many white girls in this cast of the ballet. Things like that I always thought, you know, obviously that's not right, but maybe it's subjective, it's the arts, you know, someone in the front of the room gets to make the artistic call and create the racial rainbow they want to see on stage. Anyway, that's a sidebar. I would say, returning to Harvard in 2023, this was September 2023, I was very, very anxious about being a conservative woman amongst basically a bunch of Gen Z classmates who, as we all know now, kind of like the profile of what an average kind of liberal, progressive Harvard student is. Usually like a bi-coastal student, so kind of describing myself from New York or California. You know, incredibly privileged upbringing, excellent schooling. These students aren't dumb, you know, they're whip smart, and I often feel like a Flintstone amongst my peers at school. But, you know, the degree of indoctrination that they've already had by the time they're arriving on campus is tremendous. Pronouns are a given. In my orientation in 2023, September, I was put through a slideshow where there was a wheel of oppression, and it had like 250 ways that you can offend the person next to you before you would even have an actual exchange or interaction with them. And I just thought, okay, I'm in my late 20s, I'm coming back to school. I was married already at that point. I haven't lived on campus. I was living in an apartment in Boston with my husband, so I had some like social separation from campus. But gosh, I felt that peer pressure. I felt that anxiety, that social anxiety of, I really don't want to upset the person next to me. I'm not trying to be mean to people or offend them. So I, you know, clicked through the wheel of oppression. I took a screenshot of it, but first, for evidence, but still. You know, I clicked through the wheel of oppression, and I said, yes, 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 yes. And if you don't, you know, go through these trainings, you literally can't enroll at the school. Like, this is the kind of the required program, like an HR training that you might have at work, if that makes sense. So that September, I call it the perfect storm of events that kind of led up to what some of you may remember as like Claudine Gay, the Harvard president's resignation, Chairwoman Stefanik's kind of congressional testimony with the university presidents. So I'll take you back to that September on campus. Harvard's a beautiful place. I like to think that it still contains some je ne sais quoi, some magic. It's a beautiful institution. You can want to burn it down, it's okay. I know some of you might want to. But it definitely has, that weight of history. And when you're walking around that campus, particularly as a conservative student, I'm very aware and only hope to live up to the legacy of many great Harvard graduates. And school received a free speech ranking from the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, or FIRE, that was in the negatives. It was, out of all the schools across the country, Harvard was below 0. I think it was negative 10 point something. And I just thought, how could that be, I remember my classes, I'm in seminar discussions and lectures, and how could it be that free speech is in such a sorry state? And it really only took me maybe 2 weeks of classes to realize that wheel of oppression with 250 ways that you can offend somebody was very much paralyzing every single student from the moment that they entered a classroom, even to their interactions in the dining halls on campus, in the dorms, in student life, how you create some of, what are supposed to be your best college memories and friendships. Everybody's anxious. And that's what I found with Salient. The Salient is a fantastic, fantastic institution. They publish and distribute conservative magazines across campus 6 times a year, and it's kind of like an all-out assault on campus. You just, all of a sudden, you see Salients everywhere, and they're publishing things about conservative values, family values, something that an average Harvard student would be like allergic to. They break out in hives reading it, or they immediately dismiss it as, this is a Christian nationalist, publication, and this isn't even worthy of being read. In fact, some Harvard students would rip up the Salient, and they would discard it. We would deliver it door to door for every student to read, and some Harvard students would have a hissy fit or like a tantrum of some kind. You just have to imagine the scene in your head that you come to Harvard University to learn, and when you receive a conservative publication to your doorstep, you pick it up and tear it into tiny pieces and disperse it across your entire hallway. I mean, it's like a mania just to imagine someone doing something like that. That's a huge indicator, right? Like major free speech problems on campus. Right after that, October 7th happens. I was not prepared for that, as many American Jews were not. And I certainly was not prepared for the sympathy for Hamas, for the terrorists that my peers expressed on campus. And, I'm lucky that, there are Jewish students walking around with yarmulkes on campus or tzitzit, and I don't know how they felt during that moment, because to be visibly Jewish is, I think, a different story. But personally, I put on my Star of David, and I said, okay, this is going to be what the fight here in my time at Harvard is going to be about. You don't have a choice. And I think also the kind of conservative reaction, of course, the Salient, having joined it by the 7th of October, was the first student organization to denounce the 40-something other student organizations that blamed the attack on Israel. So we're very, very stern about that. But interestingly, the Salient is not a religious organization. It's just a bunch of conservative students, maybe like 30 of us total, and nobody else denounced it. It was completely uncanny, like out-of-body experience. And then to go to classes and be sitting next to students wearing, you know, terrorist scarves, basically, and talking about, you know, in a history class about how America is terrible and how all the sins America has committed, or to go to a government class and to hear a student, you know, say, talk about the virtues of communism and critical race theory next to you. It's just like, I couldn't believe how it kind of created this permission structure for, I think, like the most radical students to kind of come out of the woodwork in a way that before just presented itself as like anxiety when I first arrived on campus. It was a real turning point. The school really fumbled the October 7th reaction, as some of you may remember. The new president of the university, Claudine Gay, was the first female African-American president, or I think she's technically Caribbean American, and she just could not denounce the students who put out these statements. It was not so much what she said, but what she didn't say. It's not very difficult, as we all saw in the congressional testimony, to denounce these actions, particularly in the wake of the wheel of repression that I talked about earlier. You know, when speech was already policed to such a high extent on campus, in fact, you would receive disciplinary repercussions from the university if you, for example, called someone by the wrong pronouns. To say, you know, globalize the Intifada was considered fair game, right? But the perfect storm was these free speech rankings the school had received in September kind of put the school on this like radical free speech footing where they thought, you know, our free speech reputation is really, really, really in the gutter. We got to strengthen it. And then, of course, after October 7th, they thought, now's the time to stand up for free speech, you know. That's, in my head, that's one of the major explanations for why the school ended up bungling the response so badly. You know, all philosophy and all that aside. The exam period, you know, we get to December and we are taking our exams where you sign an honor code and you say, you know, I, Sara Steele, am taking this exam in person on this time and date, etc. I get a New York Times notification on my phone that our president, Claudine Gay, has been found to have plagiarized a tremendous amount of her academic career. And I'm like, where are my notes? Can I take this exam with my laptop open? You know, like, it was a joke. It got to a point where it was a joke. She ended up stepping down on January 2nd, I believe, so that she could write one day in the future that she was the president of Harvard from 2023 to 2024 and not have to keep it all in the same year. But overall, that period of time, I think, really, really illuminates, I think, the core problem with Harvard, even going forward to the most recent Trump administration investigations and negotiations now with the school. The new president, Alan Garber, I have to give him credit where credit's due. He understands anti-Semitism on campus, I think in a way that other administrators could not. He was the provost of the school, so if it makes sense, like the president's kind of more of this figurehead role where they're meant to inspire, but the like level of competency and administrative talent you actually have to have is not quite the same as the provost, who's kind of like the deputy, who can really like backfill some of that technical knowledge. So now it's like the guy who's doing a lot of the work is now in charge. And at the Salient, once I was lucky enough to serve as president, my imperative was, look, you know, a lot of America would prefer if Harvard just, you know, burst into flames right now. I understand the resentment, and I understand how deep kind of the progressive philosophy goes, how deeply ingrained it's in tenured faculty, and it's in students from the time they're in middle school. They're learning about, you know, basically how to be woke and how to carry that philosophy out in your day-to-day life and into your college years and beyond. So I felt that I had to signal to the school, hey, you have a handful of conservative students on campus who want our college experience to be about our education, and that's it. We don't want to have to be on this campus and be professional activists. You know, we want to be able to be on this campus, go to class, put our head down in our books, learn the, you know, the classics, and learn about everything that will make us good citizens and good Americans. But the school keeps making these terrible decisions, so we feel like our hand is forced. And it came down to actually a censorship battle, where, as I mentioned, you know, students were ripping up the Salient in hallways throughout campus, in dorms throughout campus, where professors in the houses began banning us from the house altogether. And they said, oh, a student complained about you guys. Just happens to be the way the rules are that the professors can ban any student publication from distributing in the house. And I'm a rule follower. I did not want to put the Salient in a kind of antagonistic orientation with the school. And I said, okay, who do I talk to fix that? It took a year. I probably had like upwards of 15 meetings with different school administrators until finally we escalated to the highest level of Harvard's administration. And also, I might add, after Trump won the election. And finally they said, okay, we hear you, you can distribute. And I said, why did it take you a year to figure out that this is just a basic free speech argument? This is not rocket science. You know, students should receive the communist publication too at their doorstep. I would love it, actually, if they did that. Instead, they're pitching a tent in Harvard Yard, not writing down their arguments for the rest of campus to contend with. They're just shouting it through a megaphone. What good does that do? And once it happened, obviously, the Salient became it was like a weight lifted off of our shoulders, right? We weren't battling the university anymore. But in that process, we kind of made partnerships through people at Harvard, administrators, professors, other student organizations, I might add, including the Crimson, who really, really do care about the school and want it to change for the better. And I think we're getting there. It's going to take a long time. Everyone says that, you know, government bureaucracy, you know, it's impossible and nothing's ever going to change. You know, you throw some disruptions in there and, you know, Harvard's feeling an alumni squeeze, a donor squeeze, student pressure, professors are working on this, parents are crying out. There's a lot of directions that Harvard's feeling the pressure right now, administration no less, and I think it's just it's a Leviathan, and it takes a second to kind of steer the head of the Leviathan in another direction. With the work of the Salient, I'm very, very proud to say I'll be graduating in December. I appreciate that. I'm proud to say that I'm graduating from Harvard. You know, I'm going to take that degree and I'm going to hang it on my wall, knowing that I did something to tangibly change the state of speech on campus, to further conservative thought on campus. I'm just sad that it happened through a student organization and not through my professors and classes, and that's really how it should be, right? But that's not how it ended up happening. I think that's all I have for now. Am I allowed to take questions? Is that
After Al speaks.
okay? Well, with that, Al.
Great, thank you.
Except that was my job.
Oh, you do.
But you did it right. Didn't she do beautifully? Someone who says that she's not experienced, you did beautiful. No faces.
Okay, sorry.
Just a big smile, which you have, and I enjoy watching and listening to you. She's wonderful. And I met her only once, and you were wonderful there. She was leading a small group, and really phenomenal opportunity to meet you in that role, talking about the Salient and some of the students. Yes?
I'm just curious what you studied there, what you're getting your degree.
You'll be able to ask anything you want after Al speaks, because Al is a security expert. He's the CEO of a security firm and happens to be a good friend. And so when he identified some of the issues that are really disturbing him and should be disturbing all of us and what happened in Colorado, he's offering his time, free of charge, and he's going to share some of his thinking with us. The title of his, I have it in, hold on a second.
It's on the screen.
Is it on the screen, your title?
You may not have that.
No. Yeah, well, no, that's not what you sent me, and I'm going to say it. So, go, right.
It's government, by the way. Political science.
Okay, now, the topic, and by the way, he is a member, an active Republican in the Palm Beach County Republican Executive Committee, and we have a number of people here who are. Can you just raise your hand? Yeah, and if you're interested, let us know. We'll tell you how to get involved, and that's a big deal. As I said, he's a licensed expert, and his topic is staying safe in an ideologically charged world of hate and division. Al, take it away.
Thank you, Hilda. And Sarah, wonderful sharing your experience there. Isn't like 90+% of the professors there liberal?
I think it's like 97.
97,
Yeah.
yeah, I've heard that. It's a free speech problem. And by the way, you'd be happy to know that I'm also intersectional. I'm half Italian and Irish.
Very good.
Okay? I have 4% Ashkenazi Jews. I hope that helps in this room. Well, thank you for taking interest in your security. There's a number of ways to look at security. Let me move to a slide here. I have too many slides, and we're not going to do them all because my typical class is at least 3 hours. And we're not going to do 3 hours. So I have a challenge trying to get this down to 20 minutes. So a little bit about myself. That's my name. I'm an Army veteran, expert marksman, M16, served in South Korea. I have a number of NRA instructor. Thank you. I have a number of NRA instructor certifications there, like 9. That's my business card, associations. Let's just move on here. Why are we here? I think we know. I started out talking to Hilda, communicating with Hilda about the atrocity in Colorado, right, where the guy came out with his makeshift fire flamethrower, and that was an event. I call that an event. This is called an event. An event is a group of people getting together, going to do something together. And if it's controversial,
especially in this climate today, and you don't have security, you're making a big mistake. Those folks walking through that square or whatever it was down that street apparently had no security, because that guy was firing off his weapon of choice with impunity, right? Nobody challenged him. If that happened in Florida, that guy would have been shot before he got that thing off, or shortly after. So if you're organizing an event like that, have security. Now, how did we get here? Now, I'm going to get political only right here at this moment. Security is not a political matter, right? We all should be concerned about our personal security. But how did we get here? All right, it's appeasement. We're appeasing our enemies. And these two gentlemen, I call them knuckleheads, I'm sorry, but they let this into our country. All right? And thankfully we've got this gentleman here, President Trump, to take care of business. Take care of business. I got here cleaning up aisle 666. All right, let's move on. I got that off my chest. What happens next? All right, so in a civil society, we call it a stable society, you have rule of law, right? And rule of law, when that's the prime condition, you're responsible for your independent security. That's your personal security. It's called independent security. You're responsible for yours, you're responsible for yours, and for perhaps the people around you, your loved ones, right? Because the police, when seconds matter, as you may have heard, the police are minutes away. Okay, so you're responsible for your personal security. The other end of that is anarchy. The extreme end of that is anarchy, right? That's lawlessness, the lack of rule of law. The only thing keeping us from that is the thin blue line, law enforcement. Anytime you see a law enforcement person of any kind, buy them lunch, thank them, because they're standing between you and this. This is Kyle Rittenhauer, if you don't remember, if you all remember that incident there. That was so when you have that blue line starting to break apart, it's not quite broken apart, but it's breaking apart, you have what's called a metastable condition. Not to get too geeky with the science of metastable, but what that means is you can't be sure which side of that you're going to be on at any time. That's where we are today. You're standing right here on the cusp of the metastable. You've seen it in Los Angeles. You've seen it in Portland, New York, Chicago, Detroit, what have you. You could probably list them better than I can. So what do? Security Cat says you need to worry. I say take that worry energy and turn it into a plan. You got to be adaptive, and you have to respond. Now, this class I would spend 2 hours on, so we're going to skip over all this. We may come back to bits of it later if we have time. But let me go on to here. So I talked about the independent security, right? That's your everyday security. It's situational. Depends on where you are and what you're doing at that moment. You're home, you're at the grocery store, you're at the gas station, wherever. That's your personal security. You're still responsible for that. The interdependent security means you set up something with your community to replace rule of law, to replace the things that are going to happen when society breaks down. So we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about this one. We're not going to talk about this one tonight. I could talk for hours on each one of those separately. What we're going to talk about is event security. Okay, that's what I think you guys need to hear. This is an event right here. I don't see any security here. There's a cop car out there. Is there actually a cop? Yeah, I haven't seen him. All right, but they even, okay, I'm gonna talk about law enforcement and what to do, but let's carry on here. You probably can't read that, so I'll just say it. Group events and gatherings. Hello, they're testing, 1, 2, 3. You want designated security. I suggest you call them ushers or crowd control. Because if any of your security folks do something wrong and the lawyers get involved, your security folks are supposed to be licensed and insured. Security, I'm putting that in quotes, you gotta be licensed and insured. So you can call them ushers or crowd control, and they can respond, just as John would respond, because I know John's trained. If you're trained with your pistol, and you're trained as a team, you can still react. You don't have to call yourself security, but you can be stationed around the room. And we're going to do a little demo on that in a minute. Risks of being armed and well-meaning, but untrained. I'll dig into that in a minute. You probably know where I'm going with that. Train individually and train and plan with your team. We're talking about I'm going to call it security team, it's easier. Law enforcement. Have them on the job if you know of a threat. If you know there's a threat, or you got that spidey sense, or you feel like something's going to bust in the door, or you're going to have some aggravators in the room, have law enforcement. Demonstrations. Our first demonstration I want to do is called the Tuller Rule, but I have to explain it first. Anyone heard of the Tuller Rule? Tuller Drill, sorry. All right, so back in the 1930s, 40s, I forget the date exactly, Officer Tuller was trying to solve a problem where people were questioning, well, how close or far can a person with a knife be before it's okay to shoot them? Anybody?
20 feet. 21 feet.
Good job. 21 feet. 20. That's it. So I've got some tape on the floor here. Before we demonstrate this, I have to explain for those of you who don't know why it's 21 feet. What Tuller did was say, well, let's test this out. Let's find out what that distance is. So he had a group of officers standing facing paper targets with actual weapons, and another group of officers behind that group. He had them back there, friendly foes, and their job is to act like attackers. So when someone said go, that group of officers had to run forward towards this group, and this group had to draw their weapon and hit the target before they got touched on the shoulder by the friendly foe. And they did this over and over again until they found that it's reasonable to expect a well-trained firearms person, whether it's law enforcement or otherwise, it's reasonable to expect them to be able to draw and shoot within 1.5 seconds. If you carry a firearm and can't do that, get trained. Okay, I'll leave that alone. And within that 1.5 seconds, a fairly fast runner can get to you in 21 feet. That's where the 21 feet comes from. So we're going to demonstrate that here. Who thinks they're the fastest runner in the room? I'm looking at John, but is anyone faster than John?
Who do you think is still running?
All right, and one more thing, John, you're gonna stand over here. There. At this blue line here. One more thing, I have to explain it, or else I might get shot. This here is a gas-powered pistol. It does not shoot bullets. Let me put this down and I'll shout. So I'm going to demonstrate this so you know this is not an actual firearm. magazine has nothing in it. Okay? And when I pull the trigger, right, guys, don't shoot me, okay? All right, that's the sound you're going to hear when I fire the gun. Now, I'm going to take my actual weapon off here so I don't pull the wrong gun out. Thank you.
Could you turn that a little sideways? Thank you.
All right.
Good job, Fred.
Thank you.
Al,
Yes, dear.
you have to use a teacher's voice.
Teacher's voice.
Yes, Al.
Your outside voice.
Yes. Okay. We're going to start this now. So, John, when let's see, when Fred says go, you're
Okay.
my volunteer. When you say
You want
go,
to count down? 3, 2, 1, go?
No. You just say go. John's going to run at me,
Right.
and I'm going to try to hit that door shoot the door with my pistol before he can get to me. And John, I'm going to stand over here so you can run by me. Because he's a big guy, I don't want to get bowled over, okay? All right, it's on you, Fred.
Go!
Okay, I want to talk about how that goes down. Thank you, John.
Microphone? Yeah.
All right, so what you saw there was a few conditions. One is, I didn't know that John had a knife and was going to come at me. That's why I hadn't unholstered, right? So that's one condition. If I knew John had a knife, I'd already had the gun out and saying, and not pointed at him, not pointed specifically at him, I'd be pointing at the ground. I'd go, drop the knife. And then if he started running, I wouldn't need 1.5 seconds, would I? Right? So that's a condition where I didn't know he was going to charge at me until the moment he started charging. Or I didn't even know he had a knife until then. So, and the other condition is, or a caveat, is I don't have to stand still when he's coming at me. Naturally, if it was a real attack, I'd be facing him. So I might be able to move aside and kind of juke around to avoid him. So I can maybe buy me an extra quarter second or half. But the last thing I want to say about that demo is the tool or drill is admissible in court as a defense for you if you have to use it. Okay, so let's carry on here. All right, so I have a couple other scenarios I want to pull out with my trick here. So let's look at this group here. I don't want you to raise your hand, but I'm sure that a number of you are armed. Okay, and if something happened in this room, either they came in through that back door, busted in through that one, or this one, somehow they got in, or they're seated among you, how would you handle that? So if I can get a few of you just to stand up, let me. Visuals are always great. You can imagine this stuff, but if you can visualize it, it's much better. John, if you'll take these and hand them out to a couple other guys of your choosing. These are plastic guns. They're not real.
Famous last words. Anyone? Don't they have plastic locks now that can beat the airport security?
No.
No?
No. All right, so those of you who have the plastic guns, I'd like, what's your name, sir? Stan, if I can get you to stand over there by that exit. You come over here, John, by the flag. And Hilda's got the other one, so you'll stand by that wall back there. Hilda's deadly. No, back that way, Stan.
Hold it up. Let's see it.
Stan looks a little like Clint Eastwood, doesn't he?
He does. Yeah. Make my day. All right, Stan, your security. John, your security. Hilda's security. So, scenario one. I'm a highly targeted speaker. Imagine how popular I am. But also hated. And so I hired these people to protect me as I'm speaking to you. All right. And ma'am, what is your name? Irene. Are you physically able to stand up? Yeah. All right, when I ask you. Okay. All right, Irene's our bad guy. All right, we don't know that Irene's a bad guy because, she just came in, like all of you, to come see the speech. And I'm saying something that she really doesn't want to hear. So Hilda stands up. Irene, I'm sorry. Hilda there. Irene here. Irene. Hilda is standing, yes. All right. So Irene stands up and yells, so I'm not going to say it, some Islamic nonsense. And I don't want to even say it. You know what I want to say, but I'm not going to say it. She says, so that's a warning, right? At least she gave us a warning that she's about to do something bad. So how many of you in the room who are, again, I don't want to know who's armed, but just think about this. If you were thinking about shooting Irene, which way would that bullet go? And all right, and would you be accurate enough to hit her? And how many of these folks would be panicking and standing up and running in some directions while you're trying to hit her? All right, so security's in the room. Your job's to get on the floor. Yeah, your job's to get down. Get down. If you run, you're going to get shot. Think of it that way. You may not, but you may. So you get down. Just get down away from the line of fire to crossfire. All right, that's the instruction. You can sit down, Irene. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, the next thing I want you to think about.
Can I make a comment, if I might?
Yes.
In this room, not everybody's going to get down and get up.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Right, you can get down and never get up, or at least ask for help afterwards. Good point, Hilda. Right. All right, moving on here. So.
All the adrenaline, they might jump right back up too. The adrenaline is.
Yeah, I actually talk about that for 3 hours, all the biomedical stuff that goes on. But we don't have time for that. Good point. Imagine Irene's still standing. I didn't want her to continue doing that for unnecessary. But, all right, she's still standing. It just happened. She shouted, whatever it is. And now our security, your guys are behaving. You got on the ground. And now our security guys are going to take care of Irene. Now I know John. I trained John. John took one of my advanced defensive pistol courses. I know what he can do. I'm not sure what Stan can do. And Hilda's deadly. Okay, but let's imagine.
By the way. I don't need a gun either.
All right, but for argument's sake, they're all trained. Okay, they're all trained. That's why I hired them. And not only are they trained individually, they're trained as a team, right? They have a strategy and they have tactics that work together. So when they know that when a person standing in the middle of the room stands up, which one of them is going to take care of that business, and which one, Hilda would maybe run over this way so she's not in the line of fire. Because she knows that John's going to take out Irene. Neutralize. So if it happened in this corner, a different story. If it happened in that corner, different story, right? So they would be trained and know exactly what to do in that scenario. If you have law enforcement in the room, how does that change the picture? They're in charge, but John, Stan, and Hilda have met with the law enforcement officer or officers beforehand and talked about how they're all going to operate. And they discuss where's the nearest hospital and who has the medical equipment to deal with someone who got shot, whether it's the bad person or the good person. So you know exactly, you can act immediately. Who's going to call 911? There's a plan for all this. I teach this, but That's again a whole day thing. This is so you're aware. Okay, what I suggest you do. I don't know. Are those outside doors, are they locked? All right. I suggest if you're not going to have John and Stan and Hilda here with their guns trained, you'd lock that door when the meeting starts. Also, you have the right to tell people you can't bring that bag in here. All right, this is what I do when I set up security for events. I tell the people checking in to look for backpacks, large things. Why are you bringing that in here? I brought this in, nobody asked me what's in that. Right? Don't let anybody in with things that don't need to be here. What's in that? Can I look in it? If they won't let you look in it, they need to leave. All you ladies ought to be okay with Hilda looking in your purse. If she says, well, "Can I see what you got in there?" All right, this is important. If I seem like I'm a security fanatic, you're right. You're right. I'm over the top. But if you just even meet me halfway there, you're doing better than you did yesterday. Okay. Let's see. What else did I have? We did that. Okay, so I'll open it up for questions. Do you want to start with Sarah?
Well, here's what we're going to do.
Be careful where you're pointing that thing, Hilda.
I'm going to hold the mic, and if you want to speak, just line up in the middle. I'm going to give you the mic. You can choose to ask a question of either of them. To me, it's pretty related. I want this. Hold on. Let me finish instructing. So you'll have about one question to ask, because I have a feeling this is one of those very important discussions. I learned a lot of things already, and how we are supposed to handle events, and we're not that prepared. Although I know Frida is kind of in charge of security here. But from what he's saying, we don't call you security anymore, right?
Ushers, crowd control.
Crowd control, otherwise you get sued. And we don't want that. Anyway, so this synagogue has a process. I don't know if this is what has been taught, but this is really very good information for all of us. Because if you're aware of it, then you know how to behave. And I think that there was some training for the whole, right? There was training for the whole bit, for the entire staff here, not staff, members. And so what you've taught us is really, really important.
Thank you.
How tall do I have to be a social, what is that called again? A crowd controller. You know, I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah, but you don't have to be a lethal person to be responsible for a portion of the crowd control.
You don't have to be a lethal person, meaning you don't have to be carrying a firearm or be able to tackle somebody to be a part of that team. You can be eyes, ears, and be communicating to the team. So, and helping with planning and strategy.
All right. Who would like to ask a question? Anna.
Sarah, thank you for your speech. Do you feel safe on campus?
Great question. To be honest, I do, in the sense that, in a practical sense. So I would say on the physical campus, which Harvard is actually lucky to, have these huge iron gates, which are very picturesque. I'm sure you've seen them, in the Wall Street Journal or whatever. That actual private property that is Harvard is very safe. They have a great police department on campus and Securitas who make sure that students are physically safe in this kind of like practical sense. I would say Cambridge, however, the city of Cambridge is not safe. There's issues with, it's very sad actually, like homeless folks in Harvard Square that kind of like assault female students. At the Salient, you know, our headquarters is right in Harvard Square. It's quite a walk from the student dorms. Sometimes we have a buddy system to send female students home in particular, so they're always escorted by a young gentleman just because you can never be too sure. And I think the disconcerting part is that they don't let students carry on campus. I would like to advocate for students to carry on campus, but for now I just encourage all my friends to carry like a birdie alarm. You know, you pull it, it shrieks like holy heck, and pepper spray. But I would say ideologically, you know, in terms of what people espouse and kind of the extremely kind of profoundly dystopian kind of ideology that a lot of my fellow students have, I don't feel safe knowing that some of my peers on campus are like the future leaders of America and other places around the world. I think that's like profoundly disturbing, and you know, when people have those ideas kind of confirmed and reaffirmed to them for years on campus, and they go out into the world with them like that, that's very dangerous, in my opinion.
But do you feel like you're targeted because you're Jewish? Have you ever felt that? And is there any support from the campus?
Yeah, I have to say, at Harvard, the Hillel and Chabad both are wonderful. Chabad in particular, the Rabbi Zarki there, it has been wonderful in making sure that all the Jewish students feel like they have each other. And there's a lot of community events and that type of thing. I personally am not, you know, outside of wearing my Star of David, I don't go up to people and say, hello, I'm Sarah, you know, I'm Jewish, and I'm a woman, and I'm she, you know, she, her, whatever. Like, I'm not introducing myself that way. I prefer to just have a normal conversation with someone before, you know, going through my whole identity list. So personally, I just think there's so much about a person and their uniqueness and, you know, the ideas that they have to offer on campus that I want to know before all of their, you know, markers. So at least maybe I'm having like a biased college experience though. I'd be interested to hear what maybe like a freshman coming in now would have to say, a Jewish freshman coming in now would have to say.
Any y'all have a question?
I have a question. Come on, let me have
Wait a minute. There's an audience here.
I have a question
You've got
of
it
your
next.
security person. Can you hear me? How come there's no security tonight?
He has a gun.
We have security here right now. You saw his gun. We take it with it. The doors are supposed to be locked.
Supposed to be.
They're not locked. I don't know, quite frankly, I don't know if you will keep them open every time you have your meeting, but I can tell you that's not going to
No, we
happen.
generally do close it when everyone's in here already. In the past, we were sitting outside.
Right. So that's typically what we do. So it's a good point.
Yes.
It's a lapse on our part, but typically we have.
Absolutely, and I'm very aware of that wherever I go now, that everybody should have security, especially anything to do with conservative or Jewish, especially all our Jewish institutions. And if we let ourselves,
What's your question of them?
well, that's my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Where's security? All right, Fred is anxious to ask.
Al, thank you for your talk. I just have a question about, I believe you said if you don't have security or law enforcement, you ought to lock the door. Is that correct?
Correct.
So what if the threat is from within the room, like, what was her name?
Irene.
Yeah, or what if some kind of chemical agent was released? By having locked doors, aren't you trapping your event people?
Okay, a couple ideas there. Thank you, Fred. Great questions. All right, I'm not saying only lock the doors when you don't have security. Just lock them all the time, but don't lock them where people can't get out. That's a fire hazard at the very least, right? Good question, Fred. Did I answer all your questions? Okay, John?
These doors,
Here, hello.
I'm gonna be loud enough. These doors are locked from the outside. They have what's called panic hardware. So even though it's locked from the outside, nobody can get in. All you got to do is push on this bar right here, and you're out.
That's Chief John right there. He was a fireman.
Thanks, John.
Irene wants to ask a question.
She's not gonna give them.
Sarah, the students at Harvard, do they separate Zionism from Judaism?
Great
or
question.
Because I find when they interviewed some of them, they had no idea. These are brilliant students.
Mhm.
And they did not seem to know the difference at all.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have to say, you know, I made a remark about how I feel like a Flintstone amongst my peers, my conservative peers on campus. I do think the average Harvard student is relatively high achieving young individual, but yeah, that particular discrepancy is a matter of sheer propaganda and indoctrination that they have received, right? You can watch some conservative folks out there who call themselves conservative, but they also don't make that discrepancy, right? So, for example, they set up tents in Harvard Yard last spring, and at one point, between two trees, kind of like a hammock, they hung a huge banner that said, anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. And to me, it's just totally absurd to not think that when you're talking about Israel, that you are talking about Jews. And, you know, of course, like, we're all very proud that Israel is a very diverse place and has people from all over the world.
Can
But
we have another question?
Yes, absolutely. Just to finish that thought, you know, the most radical students on campus do not make that discrepancy. And I think it's increasingly so that the average young person who's progressive or liberal coming onto campus also doesn't. But that's not a matter of lack of intelligence. I think it's a matter of receiving false information and indoctrination, you know, over the internet, over time, that type of thing.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, say your name.
My name is Perry Cohen. A couple of weeks ago, I was at the Atlanta airport, and there was a young Jewish man standing next to me. Obviously, I'm not shy. So I walked up to him and I said, how do you feel being in an airport like this? And here I've got my star out, you know. And he said, I'm fine. I said, do you ever feel that you're in harm's way? He said, not here in Florida, and not when I go home. I said, of course, now I have to know where's home. He said, Lakewood, New Jersey. Well, of course, you know. He said, the only place that I really am uncomfortable is when I go to New York City. Right. And he said, in 2 weeks, I'm going to a wedding in England, which my father is absolutely berserk over. But anti-Semitism is not only on the campuses.
Could you ask your question,
What?
please? Ask your question.
Are you all of you, are you finding anti-Semitism in Publix, in the grocery stores, at wherever you are you getting that feeling that we're not liked? And what are you going to do about it? No? Nobody? Yes. No? Oh.
I shop at Aldi.
You need to move to Coconut Creek.
A lot of Jewish people shop there.
I could try to answer.
Is that something that's okay?
My question related to Harvard. President Trump has come down hard on the universities and also the communities. Palm Beach County just got rid of DEI and all of their programs and the libraries too. They've gotten rid of DEI was the mission statement of the libraries.
That's great.
My question to you is that when President Trump basically told the universities no more federal funding unless you wipe out the DEI, what has Harvard done to address that?
I have to say, I think the DEI initiatives on campus are straight up illegal. You know, to just be judging people so overtly. Students for Fair Admissions, the Supreme Court decision that ruled it unconstitutional for Harvard to be admitting people or not admitting people for being Asian or white. It should not be permitted in any way, shape, or form on campus. Unfortunately, I think there's two parts. There's a DEI bureaucracy. So you have administrators who go to offices that are like vaguely in the upper levels of Harvard Square's buildings. And you don't see them, and they come out at 12 noon for their sweet green salad, and then they disappear back upstairs. And like, they're just, their job is doing things like DEI for Harvard, right? So that's kind of like a bureaucratic bloat that needs to be cut away. And I think that's just like it's like a Doge effort at Harvard that needs to happen. To my understanding, the school understands that the law is working against any DEI efforts that they wish to continue. So I would just say it would be extremely stupid of Harvard to continue to further DEI initiatives at this point, especially with the microscope that they're under from the federal government, no less. So,
One
sure.
more question.
Sure.
Thomas Sowell, you know Thomas Sowell? Of course. He spoke about how Harvard had lowered its admission standards to meet DEI, to
Right.
bring in the minorities. But they didn't lower their curriculum standards. So basically they were setting up the minorities for failure. And once they got admitted, they weren't going to lower the standards for what they were to learn in the curriculums.
And your
Is
question
is that still going on?
Is that still going on? Part of the Salient's mission is to not only increase the viewpoint diversity of Harvard by just our sheer existence at the school, but also to increase the academic rigor and the kind of academic experience of all of the students at the school. And I would say, particularly in the humanities, just because I'm in the humanities, I can speak to this the best, but I think generally it's most kind of infected in humanities departments over STEM departments, for example. There are professors who are just professors of made up things, you know? And I think like people have talked about like underwater basket weaving is the usual example where you're like, okay, like, what are you actually studying? But you see that particularly in the undergraduate context, tenured professors who are on the younger side, who are from the diverse spectrum and have like an eye patch on and like can say that they're like queer or something vague like that, and they get tenure for teaching women and gender studies. And their classes are, I can say for a fact, like not rigorous. There's nothing about what they're teaching in that class that is rigorous. I think the whole curriculum is centered around how far can you trash the piece of literature that you're reading on the curriculum, and then you get points, basically academic points, for how well you're able to tell your professor that this piece of canon is like terrible to read and terrible for the school to even put on the curriculum in the first place. So that for sure is happening. I've taken government classes before where the professor is talking about Locke and talking about like political philosophy, and then they'll say, and Elon Musk is a dictator, and I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? So I think that is not actually a function of like diversity, equity, inclusion. That's just a function of the universities being hijacked by these like really, really political professors. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What's your name?
Linda Hamburger. I have a question for both of you. Sarah, first of all, what is it you hope to do once you get this degree? And Al, where did you go to college? What did you study?
So as I mentioned, I graduated in December, which I'm very excited by. It took me 11 years to finish Harvard. But I currently work for Ben Shapiro here in South Florida as an editorial producer, and I will be doing that after graduation. So I'll be back in the area, and we can hang out more.
Now that you've practiced, now that you practice, you'll be able to do this again.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a little internship. So.
Maybe you could bring him here and show him how to answer questions or things like that.
I'm learning from him. He's the pro.
That's true. All right. Yes.
Hi, my name is Diane. Question about Harvard. So they haven't lowered their standards. However, with all the DEI, isn't it likely that professors will stretch what they give as their grading system, and people will get, forget that, and Elon Musk is an idiot, which obviously he's an idiot and we're all brilliant. But they're going to lower their standards in their classes, and they're not, Harvard degree to me doesn't mean what it used to mean. And I personally, if I had a corporation, I wouldn't hire anybody from Harvard that went there in the last 8 years. It's not a school that has that value anymore.
Right. So I think what you're specifically talking about is grade inflation, which is a favorite topic of the Salient's faculty advisor, Harvey Mansfield, who was the sole conservative professor at the school for decades. And he's famously known as Harvey C+ Mansfield because he would dole out C+ to his students like candy. Like you feel like you wrote something meaningful, and he would just give you that C+ for if for anything else, just for your kind of like moral formation, so that you don't get too cocky while you're on campus. A few C+ don't hurt. Your life isn't over if you get a C+. But I think the issue of grade inflation in general begins from the one student in the class who goes to the professor after getting a bad grade and says, "You are ruining my life by giving me this bad grade, because this C+ out of all my other A's is dropping my GPA and stopping me from getting into law school and med school and the graduate program I need to do in order to become a successful, providing, member of society one day." And the moment one student does that, it's a total snowball effect. So what I would say is, for me, I do find it discouraging when I know that I wrote a paper in 6 hours and I still get an A. And I'm like, this is not an A paper, but thank you. I appreciate the A, but I know for a fact that, this isn't my best work. I just did this at 3 a.m. to get through my degree. But the school is still rigorous. And I don't want to sound like I'm like an apparatchik from Harvard, but my education that I've experienced, all the political students and professors and grade inflation aside, is still very much a difficult undergraduate experience, particularly if you're in departments and if you have a young person who's seeking that education in a genuine way and not just kind of coasting through to check their boxes. So I think maybe it depends on the individual. It really depends on the individual.
Al, you've been silent for too long. You were already asked a question about what is your educational background, and I have another question. We have a lot of grandparents here. Maybe some of them are parents. What would you advise with respect to security on a campus, whether it's high school or college? What would you advise them to help their children, or what they need to understand about what's going on, whether to be worried about it or not? What should they be prepared to understand and to help their family?
Great question. To answer the education part, I started out in my bachelor's as a computer science engineer. I used to design the circuit boards that go into computers. And then went into project management, got my MBA, and then went into this security business and private investigation. So to answer that second question, what you want is the two, actually I asked the group here. Yeah. What do you believe is the two most important things you need to know, or the skill that you need to have to be safe from attack? Exits.
Know where your exits are.
Situational awareness. What else?
What did you say?
What's that? Training. Okay, I'm talking about a skill, something that you have. The situational awareness is closest. How to use a gun. All right, what it is? Beat the surroundings. You need to have a spidey sense. You know what the spidey sense is from Spider-Man? You got it in your gut. You're looking around and you got it. You have to develop that. Some of you are just born with it, but if you don't have it, you need to develop it. where you know, you walk into a room, I know Jody has it, you walk into a room, and John, I know some of you have this, you walk into a room and you're instantly thinking about, there's a threat possible there, I'm going to sit here so that I can see what's going on. And so I suggest you tell your kids, get that spidey sense. Also, the second part, I said there's two things. You got to think like a criminal. Think like a criminal. Get that, you don't want to be a criminal, obviously, but you got to think like, so let's think about what happened in Pittsburgh when Trump got shot. The Secret Service didn't have the criminal mind. If they did, they would have looked and said, well, you know what, there's a roof over there. Gosh, you think somebody could get up there and shoot you? How about that water tower? How about that? How about when he almost got, when somebody was hiding in the bushes up here in the golf course? Right? Thankfully, they should have, it's called advance. They didn't do an advance on the bushes. All these bushes, I work up near there often, and I'm very familiar with those bushes. I know those bushes. And I often wondered, what if somebody was hiding in those bushes while Trump was out there? Well, I figured, well, they got it covered. They're looking in the bushes. But obviously they're not. Right? Thankfully, the Secret Service was doing their advance, not looking in the bushes ahead of time before the whole thing, but they happened to be walking ahead to the next hole and saw a rifle sticking out of the fence. And then the next bad thing happens. They shoot 5 shots at the guy and miss. They need training. This is the Secret Service. Yeah, could be. He said DEI. I mean, it could be. Now, the men and women of the Secret Service, I love them. They're heroes. But something's going on there. So the point is, tell your kids, your grandkids, whatever the case may be, get that spidey sense and start thinking like a criminal mind, so you can see when you're going out places. You need to be walking with a friend in the dark and not park in certain places and so on. So that's what I have to say about that. Thank you.
I think I need to turn this on. I think we've covered an extraordinary evening with so many issues that I haven't been aware of, and I'm pretty well read. I follow, to my detriment. I follow the news as if I was glued to it, and I've got to get rid of that glue so I can get other things done. And we're very grateful to both of you. Really, they are wonderful. Now we have just a few announcements. One is that you need to register to vote. Again, annually it's required. You can do that now for next year. And it's easy to do. By now you should know how. If you don't, we're going to do a little memo on it very shortly. Anna, you know what to do.
Hilda, can I interrupt you? You mean register for mail-in ballot?
Mail-in ballot. Not well, if you aren't registered to vote, you got to do that too. But the mail-in ballot is very, very important. Unfortunately, it's beating the Republican candidates. And that's because we want to vote in person. That's our experience. But now, and some of you and some of us don't really feel like we want to go to that trouble. After all, that guy's going to win. It's not the way it works. Every vote counts, and you have to remember that sometimes things happen that you're not can't be prepared for, whether it's an emergency that you can't go out and vote, so you protect yourself, and you protect yourself against thievery, because ballots have been known to be stolen online. They pretend that they're used. So do that for yourself. Share that with your family. Please do that. And finally, I was going to ask Anna, who is our vice president for membership, to talk about joining our club. First of all, I'm very grateful to all of you who have come, and I think you will say this was really worthwhile. Do you believe that? Yeah, you did. You really. We're going to have you back.
Okay.
Now that you're really practiced.
Yeah.
So Anna, would you talk about membership very quickly?
Membership is $20 for the year, and you get all of this. But we meet once a month on the average. There's a few Jewish holidays that we don't meet, synagogue and all that. But we're happy to have you here. If you didn't sign up, we have some forms back there, but we'd love to have you sign up and join us. Thanks.
Yeah, our next meeting, we meet the fourth Tuesday of every month. So if you don't get a notice, and that can happen, it's either because we have the wrong email for you, so let us know. But before that next meeting, you should have received some sort of notification. And the next one is July 22nd. So save that date. After that, we're going to probably skip September, because it's a holiday month. And we will, the next meeting then will be October 28th.
What happened to August?
We're not going to do August. Right, because people go away in August. Whoever is living here, use August to travel. I mean, we could schedule it, but we're required to have 6 meetings a year. And we've been having one every month. I think we missed April, also holiday traveling. So we may, if you get a notice that we're having one in August, show up. I thought we would talk a little bit about Iran and Israel, but there is no time now. So study up on it, listen to the news, things are happening, even now. And let's just hope for peace. That's what we need, really. And that the remaining hostages, those who are alive, those whose family want to see their dead hostages returned for that ritual burial that we follow. So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hilda.
And thank you to all of you. And Fred, thank you. And Alyssa, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Al, how are you?